Labdien, cienījamie žurnālisti! Eiropas Savienības neformālā tieslietu un iekšlietu padomes sanāksmes tieslietu sadaļa ir veiksmīgi noslēgusies. Šodienas diskusija būs labs pamats mūsu ekspertu turpmākajam darbam, jo, kā zināms, ekspertiem ļoti bieži ir vajadzīgs precīzāk norādīt to virzienu, kurā ir jāiet. Manuprāt, šodien mums tas izdevās ļoti labi, bet vispirms kopumā pa visu šo pasākumu. Traģiskie notikumi Parīzē ievies izmaiņas mūsu sākotnējā darba kārtībā. Līdz ar to pirmkārt runājām par terorismu apkarošanas tiesiskajiem aspektiem. Vēlos apliecināt, ka prezidentūra asi nosoda naida kurināšanu, radikālismu un terorismu. Esam gatavi turpināt darbu, lai uzlabotu mūsu savstarpējo sadarbību terorismu draudu novēršanā un cīnītos pret terorismu visās tā izpausmēs. Esmu pārliecināts par tieslietu elementu nozīmi cīņā ar terorismu, jo īpaši attiecībā uz ārvalstu kaujinieku problemātiku. Mēs redzam 5 galvenos virzienus turpmākajam darbam. Tiesību aktu modernizācija, labāka Eurojust izmantošana operatīvajai darbībai, labāka izpratne par ārvalstu kaujinieku kriminālu vajāšanas juridiskajiem aspektiem, rehabilitācijas programmu izmantošana tieslietu kontekstā un tiesiskās sadarbības stiprināšana. Pēc vakardienas un šodienas sanāksmes prezidentūra ir iecerējusi nākt klajā ar kopēju iekšlietu un tieslietu paziņojumu par turpmāko rīcību terorisma apkarošanas jomā, kas šodien tiks nosūtīts Eiropas padomes prezidentam Donaldam Tuskam. Uzskatām, ka tas varētu kalpot par pamatu turpmākajām diskusijām Eiropadomē. Otrkārt, šodien runājām par modernizāciju. Gan datu aizsardzības kontekstā, gan attiecībā uz jaunu un plašāku tehnoloģiju izmantošanu un regulējumu e-komercijā. Apzinoties datu aizsardzības nozīmi Eiropas dienas kārtībā, kā arī strauju digitālās ekonomikas un moderno tehnoloģiju attīstību pasaulē, prezidentūras primārais mērķis ir panākt pēc iespējas lielāku progresu attiecībā uz datu reformu. Uzskatu, ka mūsu šodienas diskusija bija labs pamats, lai virzītos tālāk datu aizsardzības jautājumiem. Uzskatu, ka pasākumi tieslietu jomā varētu sniegt arī pilnvērtīgu ieguldījumu digitālas un konkurētspējīgas Eiropas izaugsmē. Noslēgumā vēlos jūs informēt, ka Latvijas prezidentūra ir iedibinājusi jaunu tradīciju, ir ieviesusi jaunu simbolu prezidentūras darbā. Tas ir āmurs, kurš tiks nodots no prezidentūras uz prezidentūru, un tas ir paliktnis, uz kura būs katras nākamās prezidentūras logotips. Un šī tradīcija tiks īstenota jūnijā, kad Latvijas prezidentūra tiks simboliski, acīm redzot ar āmura sitienu, nodota tālāk Luksemburgai, kur turpinās mūsu iesāktos un iepriekšējo prezidentūru iesāktos darbus. Paldies par uzmanību.
Thank you, Minister. Commissioner, you have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you for coming to this press conference and to giving your attention to the matters of justice and to everything we dealt with today. First, I'd like to speak about the main priority, which is combating terrorism. The recent terrorist attacks in Paris were an attack on our core values: respect for life, freedom and tolerance. We must stand up to protect these fundamental principles and values. EU Interior Ministers and my colleague Commissioner Avramopoulos had a discussion yesterday on terrorism and how Europe should respond to it. This morning, I discussed with the Justice Ministers the key role of justice policies in the future European agenda for security. I'd like to present to you now our 5 justice policy priorities to fight terrorism. First, we need to step up our action to prevent and combat anti-Semitic hatred as well as anti-Muslim sentiments. We need to fully enforce the existing EU legislation combating racism and xenophobia and make sure that it achieves results on the ground. Second, we need to make effective use of EU-level cooperation between all law enforcement actors. For example, the European arrest warrant and mutual legal assistance agreements are instruments that work well and that we must use to their full potential. Our agency, Eurojust, needs to work at its full potential and therefore be in a position to fully exchange information with Europol and be fully associated to Europol's local focal points dealing with terrorism. Third, we need to reinforce the prevention of radicalization, especially the radicalization in detention facilities. We need also to exchange experience and best practices. Fourth, through the Anti-Money Laundering Directive, we can address terrorist financing more effectively. I urge all member states to implement the directive swiftly once it's adopted. We must be able to confiscate assets quickly and to draw the right conclusions from suspicious transfers. Fifth, we need to adapt our legislative framework. First and foremost, we need to accelerate the negotiations on the proposed Data Protection Police Directive for the personal data exchanges of law enforcement authorities across the EU. I want us to continue and to intensify our law enforcement cooperation. This directive can be a key component facilitating that cooperation. We might also look at aligning the framework decision on terrorism with United Nations resolution on foreign fighters. Today we also had a fruitful discussion about data protection, so I am very pleased that we had a first ministerial discussion today on this topic, especially on the Data Protection Directive for police and criminal justice authorities. Robust data protection rules will foster more effective cooperation based on mutual trust. To achieve this trust, we need to maintain a high level of data protection, both in the proposed regulation and the police directive. We agree that there needs to be clarity about when the General Data Protection Regulation applies and when the Police Directive applies, which takes account of the specific needs of law enforcement. The proposal on the table now for the Police Directive applies to the prevention, investigation, detention and prosecution of criminal offences or the execution of criminal penalties. This scope is sufficiently broad as it covers all work by authorities linked to the enforcement of criminal law. Other public authorities should be covered by the general data protection rules. We need to swiftly conclude the ongoing negotiations on this reform project in 2015, it means this year, and start implementing the new rules to keep our citizens safe in full respect of fundamental rights. Businesses and citizens are waiting for it. As for digital justice, another reason why we need the data protection reform is to kickstart the digital single market. In 2015, the Commission will propose new initiatives, legislative and non-legislative, to bring the digital single market to the level of ambition needed to respond to the existing challenges. In this context, the Commission will simplify the rules for consumers, making online and digital purchases and facilitate e-commerce. Today, we discussed obstacles faced by consumers and traders when buying on or selling online. There are clearly real problems that need concrete solutions. The key obstacle to the digital single market is the legal fragmentation of consumer and contract rules. As a result, only 15% of consumers bought online from other EU countries in 2014, while 44% did so domestically and only 5% of businesses sell across border online. The complexity of the legal framework results in consumers losing trust in buying cross-border. EU consumers could save 11.7 billion each year if they could choose from a full range of EU goods and services when shopping online. And also for businesses, a key problem is the cost of this fragmentation. The fact that they need to comply with different contract law rules has a heavy price tag. Adding everything up, the total costs suffered by businesses when they sell to consumers in other EU countries is between 4 to 8 billion. These costs are, of course, the heaviest to bear for small and medium enterprises. And micro-enterprises represent up to 92% of all EU companies. It is clear that the potential of the digital single market is currently not exploited enough. We need to work together to offer both consumer and businesses the right rules to do away with legal fragmentation in the digital single market, to ensure that consumers are adequately protected and that business benefits from a level playing field. Finally, we discussed the further development of e-justice, which is one of my priorities. The digitalization of justice means easier access to justice for citizens, businesses, and legal professionals. Our goal should be seamless communication between citizens, practitioners, and courts everywhere in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll now take a few questions. Before asking your question, please state your name, the media you represent, and who you're asking the question to. Griselda, you were first, so there will be a microphone for you as well.
Merci beaucoup. C'est Griselda Pastor, je travaille pour la radio espagnole Cadena Ser. J'aimerais avoir une réponse à une question générale, étant donné le changement législatif qui sont sur la table pour les besoins de la sécurité. Il y a pas mal de citoyens qui craignent voir les droits individuels se détériorer dans l'Union européenne. J'aimerais savoir, comme responsable de la justice, quel est le message, disons, face à cette crainte. Et concrètement, face au problème au Parlement, j'aimerais savoir si vous soutenez ou non le député qui considère nécessaire une directive pour le traitement de données avant de garantir le PNR.
Minister, maybe you would...
Jā, paldies Spānijas rādio par jautājumu. Runājot par datu drošību, atbilde ir pavisam vienkārša. Mums ir vienos svara kausos vienā pusē jānoliek ir sabiedrības drošība, sabiedrības intereses, un otros svara kausos ikviena individa cilvēktiesības un pamatbrīvības. Un jārīkojas ir tā, lai būtu līdzsvars, lai mēs spētu novērst teroraktus un vienlaikus, lai mēs spētu aizsargāt to cilvēku tiesības un brīvības, kuru dati būs šajās datu bāzēs. Tātad tā būs paaugstināta atbildība šiem datu apkopotājiem, reģistrētājiem, un tie būs izmantojami tikai un vienīgi sabiedrības drošības interesēs, terorismu novēršanai, organizētās noziedzības novēršanai.
Commissioner?
I would undersign what the Minister just said. We are not trying to solve a trivial problem, to find the right balance between the requirements on security on one side, which are so urgent, especially last several weeks after the Paris attacks. We keep talking about this. And on the other side, we need to be sure that the fundamental rights and the protection of privacy has its place. So this was very much discussed over the discussion about the Data Protection Regulation and the Police Directive, because we keep speaking about the scope of the Police Directive and about the scope the law enforcement authorities will have the right to deal with the private data. And this discussion will continue over the following months because we need to find the right balance. And I am very much in favor of the original proposal of the Commission, and I am convinced that the scope which has been proposed is right, but there were many concerns raised by the several member states today that they would like to strengthen the scope and widen the scope of the Police Directive. So the discussion has not been concluded yet, and we will continue. Anyway, this is the package, the Data Protection Regulation and the Police Directive. These things must go together, and I still believe that we will be able to achieve the solution by June. So during the Latvian presidency, this is one of our common priorities.
Thank you, Commissioner. The Minister would like to add something as well.
Es tikai vēlējos piebilst, ka datu aizsardzības regula būtībā būs ļoti labs instruments ikviena Eiropas iedzīvotāja tiesību aizsardzībai, datu aizsardzībai, jo darbosies šīs vienas aģentūras, vienas pieturas aģentūras princips, kurā ik viens varēs pārobežu, teiksim, datu izpaušanas pārkāpums noregulēt bez īpašām problēmām savā valstī, vēršoties konkrētajā savas valsts iestādē. Viņš varēs atrisināt vai novērst to tiesību pārkāpumu vai aizskārumu, kāds ir radies pārobežu informācijas rezultātā. Viņam nebūs, teiksim, no Latvijas jāziņo uz īriju par Facebook kaut kas vai teiksim, un tas arī attieksies uz trešajām valstīm, kuras ir ārpus Eiropas. Tātad ik viena individa tiesība aizsardzība būs daudz augstākā līmenī nekā to nosaka 95. gada līdzinējais regulējums, kas ir vecs, novecojis.
Thank you. Questions? Yes?
Mike Collier, Agence France Presse. A question for Commissioner Jourova. You mentioned that you might look at aligning your new framework with UN resolutions on foreign fighters. I wondered if you could explain a little bit more what that might mean, and also why you're not a little bit more definite about it. Saying you might look at it is not like saying we are going to do it.
In the United Nations resolution, there is a definition of this new phenomenon, and we need to transfer this definition to the EU legislation, which is the framework decision, which will be probably soon submitted to the European Council for adoption, because we agreed with all the participating member states and the ministers today that we need clear definition, not only regarding foreign fighters, but also terrorism itself in terms of criminal offenses. We need to harmonize this criminal law aspect. So to have these definitions clear in the European Union framework decision will be very practical and will be then followed by the member states in, I hope, swift adoption and implementation into the national legislations.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Yeah.
Ai Krūtaina, Reuters news agency. I have a question also to Ms. Jourova. Mr. De Kerkove mentioned earlier this morning that there are also problems regarding the how Europe would obtain evidence about these foreign fighters, because we're not on the ground in Syria or Iraq or any other of these countries. And did you discuss also this issue, and what do you see there as a potential solution from the judicial aspect? Thank you.
Yes, we discussed it, and also Madame Koning spoke about it, the president of Eurojust spoke about it, that in fact all the terrorists had criminal records. So they are recorded in ECRIS, which is the register of criminal records, which is used across the whole Europe. So we spoke about the possible enlarging of ECRIS to the third countries, and enlarging the attention of Eurojust also abroad, not only on the European Union. So it would also cover the attention paid to the people who are abroad. This needs also external actions to facilitate the internal security in Europe. This is a very wide and complex phenomenon, and to face all the challenges and threats, it will require very close cooperation of all the actors. It means of the European agencies like Eurojust and Europol. Closer cooperation is very much needed, and both agencies confirm they are ready to have such closer cooperation, but also with the member states. In December already we had a very good discussion with the member states on the phenomenon of foreign fighters, and those countries which have deeper and longer experience with terrorism and with the phenomenon of foreign fighters itself, they offered their help to other countries where this problem can be spread. So here is the offer also of those advanced countries in advice and best practices. And I think we are facing the threats which will need a consolidated, common approach and steps to be made.
Yeah. Next question. The microphone went just around the booth. No, there it is.
Thank you, Ryan Sabit-Parry for the Associated Press. This is a question for Ms. Jourova as well. Giles de Kerchove also talked about terrorist rehabilitation programs this morning as well. Was that also discussed today in today's meeting? And if so, what's the solution there? What would a terrorist rehabilitation program look like exactly?
I cannot now explain to you how he meant it. It's more, it's one thing which we share, and I share with Mr. Avramopoulos, because this is the security agenda. Anyway, as for the terrorist rehabilitation, we spoke about the penalties and about the detention conditions, because we are convinced that we should not allow the spread of radicalization in the prisons. So we are talking about some measures which would prevent us from this threat. But I think it was more on the agenda of yesterday's meeting of the Ministers of Interior.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm being told we have to end unless there's something very, very urgent. I guess not. Thank you for coming. We'll see you all next time, either in Brussels or again here. Thank you.